Welcome back to Tools of Fighter Pilots, the podcast where we break down the mindset, tactics, and culture of elite aviators and apply them to business, leadership, and life. I am TC, and I'll be your host. If you're getting value from Tools of Fighter Pilots, don't forget to subscribe. We drop mission-critical insights every week, straight from the cockpit to your headset. Today I'm joined by someone whose story runs parallel to many of ours who have worn the flying suit, but also extends far beyond it. Kyle Skalisky is a retired US Air Force fighter pilot, F-15 Eagle driver, F-16 aggressor, F-18 test pilot, and author of A Sky Less Traveled, A Maverick Life of Leadership, Resilience, and the Pursuit of Purpose. Kyle's journey isn't about only flying jets. It's about learning what it really means to lead when the sky is clear, and especially when it's not. Kyle, welcome to Tools of Fighter Pilots.
TC, thank you very much for having me. I don't get to talk to colleagues, former fighter pilots and fighter pilots as much as I used to, so I'm really looking forward to the show with you today because I know I'll have a lot of interesting things to talk about.
Yeah, we got in contact. I'm not a social media guy, but we got in contact like 1 year ago. I remember I posted a Fini flight picture of myself and my daughter, and then you posted back your Fini flight on the F-15, and then we started a little bit chatting. And finally, you published a book, this book, A Sky Less Traveled. And you know, there is the word maverick that in the imagination of people, you know, is something like, okay, they recall the movie, but the reality is the definition that you give at the beginning of the book is not about defiance. It's about an independent thought and courage to act when the playbook doesn't fit the situation. And that's what you did through your career and also when you left the Air Force. What does it mean, unconventional leadership, to you, especially for people that are leading outside the uniform in business or life?
Yeah, I guess a lot of people view leadership, you know, as a position or a title. You know, I kind of see unconventional leadership is that it's not about title or position, you know, that rather it's stepping up for your team or for your fellow employees or for the mission that you're supporting, no matter what role you have in an organization or where you are on that organizational ladder. Everybody could be a leader. And, you know, and it's not about breaking rules, as you said. You know, it's rather it's not being afraid of challenging the status quo. And the people who are willing to do that and able to do that in a manner that's not destructive to an organization. It's not to do it to always be the person, you know, that's trying to break things down, but trying to break groupthink, trying to say, hey, maybe there's a different way we can approach things, and throwing out alternatives, not just saying what's wrong, but also providing solutions. So I think a lot of people feel like, well, I'm not in a position where I can, you know, where I can make those kind of decisions or make that kind of impact. Well, you can. You can be an unconventional leader. You can be a leader at whatever level you are, you know, by throwing in suggestions and helping organizations to improve. So, you know, that's what leadership to me is all about. You know, it's not about, again, that title or position. It's about service to your team and service to the mission that you're trying to accomplish, and anybody can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you very much for giving me the book, sending me the book, which I read in 3 days, and I found so many stories. I mean, we're not the same generation, but we flew legacy aircraft, so our career in a way is overlapping for about 10 years. Yes. And there was a line in the book, leadership is not about power, it's about influence, and influence is built on trust, which really is one of the let's say, it comes down from those non-negotiables that we have as fighter pilots. Let's go deeper there, because trust is one of the invisible forces that either holds a team together or, you know, quietly erodes it.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. And I write that in the book, and I bring it up numerous times. Trust is the bedrock, you know, to highly functioning teams and for capable leaders. You know, a lot of times if you're in an organization that doesn't have trust, but things are done because of authority, because someone's in a position of authority. Well, authority doesn't inspire people. It just forces them to obey. And that's not a good way for a highly functioning team to get better and to improve and to succeed over time. It may work in short periods, but it's not going to work when you're trying to put a team together that's going to work for a long, long time. So trust, without that, nothing happens. And trust, though, doesn't happen unless you have a few other components that I talk about, which are, you got to have respect. It's hard to trust somebody that you don't have respect for. So you got to find ways to build respect and give respect to the people that are on your teams. And then you have to have accountability. And I know we'll probably talk about that more later, but, without accountability, you can't have that trust all throughout the organization. And the only way that you get that trust with respect and with accountability is through active listening. Too often people come into conversations already knowing what they want to say and already having it in their mind, and they're just not open to hearing ideas from other people, and they're just not open to wanting to hear something that's contrary to what they've set themselves up for, and without that, you can't find common ground. And so you have to actively listening with people so that you can build that respect and then that trust, and they can see that you have accountability for what you're doing. So to me, those are the things that breed a strong team. And without it, you're just not going to go there. As a leader, you'll never gain the trust of your people without the consistency in your methods. You have to be consistent. You have to be transparent. You have to live what you're saying. So if you're going to talk those kind of words, you also have to display that as yourself. And if you're not accountable as a leader, you're never going to have, the trust of your team. And if you don't respect your team, no matter where they are at in the organization, then, that's going to be something that breaks down their ability to follow you.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
There is a great book from Simon Sinek, no? Leaders Eat Last, and really it comes down to, empowering the others to talk. And one of my non-negotiables as fighter pilot is assertive communication. So you were talking before about communicating, because people, they find themselves in organizations where they are not able to talk. You need to empower them to get their feedback, because that's the way that the organization improve. Like you saw, especially when you transition to the executive career, that you found some environments that were not, let's say, not hostile but static, coming from a dynamic profile like
Well,
yours.
I was going to say, to add to that, in those organizations, I found it amazing that, yeah, there was very little review of what had happened or debrief or ways to do that. And people were so often, when things didn't work out quite right, wanted to point the finger at somebody and find blame in what happened, instead of trying to organizationally figure, hey, what happened and how can we do better? And so the thing that I learned and I carried over, and it really helped me in the aerospace and defense business world, was, kind of three things that I always did for myself, and I asked all my managers and supervisors to do, which was, if something wasn't as successful or it was a failure, before you go to a team and try to, put blame, you better ask yourself three questions. And, those questions being, was the end state clearly defined? Did you have a mission objective? Did you have an end state that everybody knew and they knew what success looked like? If you didn't define that for them, then that is on you as the leader, not on the team for failing. The other one was, did you give them the resources to do the job? How many times have you seen teams, hey, go do this, but you have no budget, or, go do this, but you got to have it done in a week. Well, it ain't going to happen for a month. Did you give them truly the resources they needed to get the job done? If you didn't, then that's on you as the leader, and you need to be accountable for that. And then finally, did you ask more than what that team was capable of doing? Did they have the experience? Did they have the knowledge? Did they have the training? And that's, in the military and as fighter pilots, that was the core to what we did. And that's why we were able to achieve the things we did, because we trained, we prepared, we understood what people needed to get that little bit of extra training or mentoring or coaching to be able to get them over the edge to do the thing that they could do. And if you say that no, that team didn't have that experience, they didn't have that training, then that's on you as a leader. So those are things that carry over from what we did as fighter pilots, and that worked very well for me in the business world.
Yeah, true. And there is at some point on the book you are using the phrase "fail to prepare, prepare to fail." No, and
Yeah.
that's non-negotiable. I mean, everything you do, you need to be prepared. So in the fighter pilot world, that's brief, execute, debrief, but you take it further, right? And you connect this one to life and business. Uh, talk a little bit more about the accountability without blame, because in the last part of the book, you're covering the psychological safety aspect, which is now in leadership a hot topic. Everybody is talking about that because it
Yeah.
works. I
Right.
interview Tamara Miles in Meaningful Work, and really it was there is science and there is statistics about people performing much better when they are in that kind of environment, safe environment. So why do you think most of the teams they still get it wrong, even if everybody is talking about this topic?
Well, it's probably because they really don't make the time for it. When I went from the fighter cockpit to the business world, I was surprised about how little time was spent on debriefing. There would be hey, we have an after action meeting. We're going to get together and we're going to, we're going to dedicate an hour for something on a project that lasted for months. We're going to spend an hour on it, and then we'll get our lessons learned. And I think there's a story in the book, like one of my first meetings, at a big aerospace defense company that I'm at, all excited as a new guy. And I'm in this about the third or fourth debrief, after action debrief session. And, the same people are raising their hands and bringing up, oh, this is a lesson that we need to learn. And I started hearing the same lesson over and over and over.
Yeah,
And
who's
I
taking
said,
action
well,
there?
it's a lesson, but we haven't necessarily learned it.
Mm.
If we're continuing to repeat it time after time after time. And so I think people go through the motions of wanting to do a debrief or an after action assessment, but what they don't do is actually take actions and actually learn those lessons. What did you change in your processes or procedures? What did you change in your training? What did you learn that, resource wise you have or don't have, or this isn't part of your core competency? And if you want it to be, then you need to change these kind of things. I think that was a big thing that I got out of it, and I truly think people try, but they just don't realize that you just don't identify what went wrong. You actually have to put concrete measures in place
Mm.
to change what went wrong
Do you
if
think
you're
that
going to be successful.
the lower level of management of the team player, they're feeling pressure from the hierarchy that is in the structure of that organization, so they don't feel like, okay, let's see what the leader is gonna do, and even if I understood that something is going wrong, I'm gonna shut up and not say anything.
Yeah, well, I think that's true. The emotional safety that you brought
Yeah.
up, I mean, that is critical. And and the leader is the one who impact, puts that out for the group. If they see that, hey, this is non-retribution. This is a chance for us to air our grievances, air the dirty laundry about what happened. And it's non-retribution. It's in the spirit of improvement, not blame. And if you have that, then people are willing to speak up. And if you don't have that level of honesty, uh, and that emotional safety where people, okay, we can talk about this and it's okay, then you're just not going to make it. Your team's not going to improve. Um, there is a study I talk about briefly in the book that Google did, about, oh, how did you get high functioning teams? And surprisingly, it isn't the team loaded with all the superstars, and all the high paid players. It was the teams that had emotional safety. It was the teams where people could throw out new ideas, even crazy ideas, and not be laughed at or not be ridiculed. And then there was some nuggets of wisdom in some of those crazy ideas that they
Yeah.
could put into their processes and procedures, and those were the teams that flourished. So I think having that kind of environment is very important.
Yeah. You took this tool from obviously from your military career, because in the squadron, when we debrief, there is no rank. And also, I train an OCU, so you're training a student, but still, he has a valuable point of view of what happened. So, if you, as a leader, you build on that humility and you're humble at the debriefing, you let people speak, then this is when you build trust.
Yeah.
I think this is a tool that every entrepreneur or athletes in a team or executive needs. Honesty and reflection without ego.
Yeah, hey TC, one point you probably have seen this too. How many times have you been in a very successful mission? Everything, hey, we really kicked butt out there today. We did a wonderful job. We don't need to debrief this. We
Oh
were
yeah,
wonderful. We did everything right. But actually you got to debrief your successes as much as you debrief your failures, because oftentimes you'll find that you had success and it wasn't because of something you did. There was just a lot of luck involved, or things that happened from the other side of their failures, not because of anything that you did so well. So, highly functioning teams not only debrief failures and where things were non-optimum,
yeah,
but they also look at success, because part of success is having repeatable and continuous success. And you can only do that by making sure that what you're doing actually led to that success, so you can make it predictable in the future. So, yeah, that's another point that I would often see is, oh, we don't need to talk about this. We
yeah,
were great.
yeah. Yeah.
Well, maybe we weren't so great. We were just lucky.
Yeah.
Um,
To be honest,
yeah.
I come from an Air Force that at the beginning of my career was like that. Also because with the F-104, there was not too much to debrief, to be honest. It was just, okay, we survived. There is nothing to debrief now, but we didn't have the tools. Then, and we have learned from the US Air Force a lot, in terms of
Yeah.
aviation culture, where the debrief became like a pillar of everything we have been doing since, let's say, the 90s. Okay, until that time we were a little bit lazy on that. Your book.
Say F-104. I intercepted an F-104 in a low-fly area in Germany back in the 1980s,
Woohoo,
and I could not believe how low and fast that F-104
yeah,
was flying. It was a first for me as a
couldn't
young
turn.
F-15.
It couldn't
But
turn,
yeah,
but it was fast.
it could go fast, and it was
Yeah,
really low. So
yeah,
I
yeah,
was
yeah.
like, I don't think I've ever flown that low.
Yeah. The book Sky Less Traveled, A Maverick Life of Leadership, Resilience, and the Pursuit of Purpose is available in Kindle, hard copy, and then soon in audiobook. So the links are there. If you guys are listening, you like what you're listening, just go and check the book. We're not going to spoil all the book here, okay? We're going to talk about a few things more, but we're not going to spoil it. One of the topics that is really interesting to me, because I always think about that, and it's a word that for a not English speaker, compartmentalization, okay, and clarity. This is really compartmentalization isn't about shutting out emotions. It's about knowing when and where to direct your focus. And I've seen through my career there were moments that I had to compartmentalize and go, okay, family switch is off or standby, let's say, and then fights on as the other switch. That's something we all learn in the cockpit, but very few ever translate in leadership. How do you teach that discipline to be fully present in this chaos?
Yeah, you often hear people, and it's very overused phrase, but you'll say, "Oh, I'm living in the moment."
Mm,
And in fact, living in the moment is a very important thing, because it's all we really have. The past is the past. You can't change it. You can learn from it, but then you just have to let it go, because you can't change it. It's nice the future to look forward, and understand that you need to have goals. You need to understand where you want to go, but it's okay to change those goals and to redirect yourself down different paths. The only truly thing you can control right now is what you're doing in the moment. And that's where the compartmentalization comes, especially in something, as intense, and you can say life and death as flying a fighter aircraft, whether it's in training or in combat. It is very intense, and decisions can lead to, life and death decisions. So it's very important to be able to focus, and that's what I will say compartmentalization is. It's really focus. and it's focus at the task on hand, and it's focus on the priorities that are in front of you in this moment.
Yeah.
You know, I hate to see it on job applications, and I'll never put it into one for any job that I'm offering out there is, oh, you have to be able to multitask.
Mm. Mm.
Multitasking is horrible. Humans can't multitask.
No.
We're not good at it. We can pretend like we are, but every time we multitask, we start something, we stop it before it's done, we go do something else. We have to start that one. And now when we go back to the previous task, we have to take time to now figure out where we left off, catch back up. And it just adds time and makes everything less efficient and over time. Instead of completing what's in front of you right now and truly being focused in that. And then when you're complete with that, go to that other task. You will get tasks done faster, and you will get them done more efficiently, and you'll get them done properly. Now, granted, sometimes when you're in the middle of something like, flying some other threat or something pops up that becomes a higher priority, well, now you're going to retask. And yet you're going to focus on that, and you're going to compartmentalize, and you're going to purposely do it. So getting rid of the distractions for what you're doing right now is very important. It doesn't mean that family's not important. They are. They're always important, but they're important when you're with your family. When you're flying a fighter jet,
Yeah,
the
true.
importance is flying the fighter jet, and so on. And when you're with your family, if that's truly what you're focused on, you probably shouldn't be sitting there with your phone looking at your emails and texting when you're supposedly, compartmentalizing and spending time with your family. Spend time with your family. So, it applies both to those things that you do that are very intense, like flying fighter jets, and those things that you do every day. When you're focused on what you're doing right now, you're a better person, and you're better for all the people that are around you.
It's about building this mental discipline as well,
Yeah.
because it's not natural, let's say. And you talked a lot in the book. It's the ability to respond instead of the ability to react, because reacting, it means like, things are happening and you are just trying to pull something out of the bucket there. But if you respond, it means that you have been preparing for that. And for us in aviation, it was survival, no? In leadership, that's wisdom when you are able to respond. I was talking today with a client I'm mentoring, and he was realizing that he was at the point that, like, I don't have to react, I'm responding, because I'm able, task one by task, to compartmentalize.
Well, that's why I like what you, in your podcasts and in your teachings, you talk about the brief, execution, and debrief, in what we do as fighter pilots. The reason we do that is because we're able to then, every time we do something, we can find some nuance or some new way, something that happened that we had never anticipated before. And then we can debrief it, and we can put in place a plan, and in the next brief, a contingency for what we do when that happens.
Sure.
And that's why fighter pilots succeed. It's not because, hey, we can do things off the cuff. It's because we've thought through all those different things so that when they do happen, even the abnormal things, when they happen, we're prepared. And that way, like you said, you're responding and you're not reacting. So that cycle, that you coach and that we talk about all the time, very critical, because that's how you get to the point that you are, and it's preparation. You're prepared for those contingencies, even the abnormals. And even when it's something that you didn't prepare for, the fact that you prepared for other things similarly gives you an ability then to adapt and to make change very quickly. So that's very important.
It's something that throughout our career we have been engineering, because it happens every day. It happens every flight. So for entrepreneurship, maybe you brief, you prepare, and then you see the result in 6 months, 12 months. So you have a different pace, but we have been engineering this one. I was asked, like, so what's the edge? Because it's a sexy profession, fighter pilot. So, but what is the edge there? We have been doing this every day. We have been perfecting. We have been searching the way, to get the best performance in the next flight, because we learn from this process. One of the most powerful parts of Sky Less Traveled is where you write about This is a great story, to be honest, about meeting Soviet and Cuban pilots because, for your role of aggressor and then developing tactics for that and, making part of this council that was looking at these things, people who were once seen as the enemies, and now, you're meeting them, and all of a sudden everything changes. And then you relate this one to leadership, saying, okay, leadership is not about making assumptions. It's understanding people, their motivation, and their potential. So, how this experience that you had with the Soviet and Cuban shape your three pillars of leadership, which are
Um, well, it was an exciting time. I was lucky to be at the period in history when, the Cold War was ending. The Berlin Wall came down, and all of a sudden, access to Eastern Europe and the former Soviet Union and the people that were there became more common. And it was exciting. I was a young man, and it was a very exciting time. But what I did learn was, as much as I thought I was an open-minded person, I trained for 10 years to, the Soviet Union were the bad guys, and they were, and if war had happened, I was totally prepared to go do what I had to do. Um, but when you meet the individual, what I try to make in there about leadership is it's don't judge somebody in the context of something that's beyond them. Judge people based on what they are as individuals. There are good and bad people
everywhere.
everywhere in the world, regardless of what system they were raised in, where they were born, which they can't control. But what's more important is to take a look at the person and themselves. And to me, over time, I'm a simple guy. We do things in threes, right, as fighter pilots, and the three C's become very
Yeah,
easy. Um, so looking at people that I wanted to be on my teams based on those interactions was, these people have the same ambitions and motivations that I do. They want to be free. They want their families to be safe. They want to be prosperous and have the chance, to have a fulfilling life. And even the guys that were, once maybe very devout Marxists or communists and were the enemy on the other side, once they had an opportunity to see what freedom was, they chose that. And that said something about their character. And it made me reevaluate how I evaluated those each individual person that I met. So character is the first one. Obviously you can't judge character based off a resume or a title or position, or even just in one sit down and a talk with somebody. Character reveals itself over time. But an important way to judge character is you can see how people treat other people that have no meaning to them, that can do nothing for them or that are below them in an organizational chart. Things like that I like to look at, not just on how someone talks with me or interacts with peers or with superiors, but what about somebody lower on the organizational chain or somebody that can do nothing for them? How are they to those people? And that defines a lot about somebody's character. What choices do they make when given the opportunity, for freedom or for doing the right thing? What kind of integrity that they display? That's an important part. You can't have a good team unless your people have character. The other part of it is competence, obviously. A team full of a lot of good people that have good character that can't do the work, they're not very good either. So you got to have competence in what you do. To the point where, when I worked at Raytheon and Mitsubishi Aircraft, I would have our HR department, when we were doing initial evaluations for new employees, I'd say redact everything, black out anything that tells me their name, what gender they would be, where they are from, how old they are, whether, get rid of all those things and just tell me what they've done and what they want to do going forward. What have they accomplished? What are they capable of doing? Not just what they've done, but what can they do in the future? What are their ambitions and goals?
mm,
And that would be a better way for me to judge people, whether they then would get an interview and move forward, because I got rid of my own bias when I was evaluating people, because we tend to all gravitate towards what we're comfortable with. And not because we're bad people, but it's just what we know. So we gravitate towards that. So if you can get rid of those kind of biases and just look at accomplishments, not what somebody was born and what they are, but what they do and what they're going to do and want to do. That was very important in evaluating competence. And so now if you have a team that has good character, they have competence and can do the job, you would think, oh, we can do a lot of things. But the third piece is commitment. I've seen a lot of very capable people that were really good people, but they did a miserable job of, if they failed in what they were trying to do because they weren't committed to the task. And sometimes I'll choose people, and I've done it very many times, choose people that maybe are less competent than others, but they are very committed to what you want to get done and they buy into your vision. And I'll take a team full of those kind of people any day. So that kind of commitment is very important. So, anybody hiring anyone and to HR people looking at things, I would always say that character, competence, and commitment are all three very necessary. And when you're looking for somebody to be on your team, and as a team to grow those same characteristics.
Yeah, I totally agree. In squadrons, boardrooms, and teams, you always want to be surrounded, and you cannot fake any of them. You cannot fake character, competence, or commitment. When I started reading the book, when the first part, I texted you and I said, "Oh, first part, a lot of stories, good stories." And again, the second part is even better. So in the second part, it comes out the human side of leadership. So you are talking about at some point joy. You're talking about finding the fun in the fight. Okay, but you're talking about those aviators that are not there anymore for a reason or the other, and how leaders should create that joyful space because of you were feeling that everything could be temporary. So we understand that as fighter pilots instinctively, but too many executives forget about a joyful workplace, a joyful environment. How do you keep that humanity alive in the high stakes environments you lead today?
Yeah, that's a good question. The discussion in the book, actually, the chapter I write about finding joy and purpose in your life, I also talk about all the mishaps and the deaths of colleagues and my friends and fellow fighter pilots that occurred in different crashes and accidents over the years, many of which I witnessed, and it just reinforced that you don't know how much time you have here on this earth. You can think you're going to be here forever, but someone who lives in the career that we lived in, and we saw what happened to many very capable young men who for whatever reason fate dictated that it was the end of their time. That if you're not having fun in it, then what is the purpose? Fun needs to be very critical, and more than just money or doing a good job. The third component in anything that you could do is, does it bring you joy? Do you look forward to going to work every day? Do you look forward to the challenges and the accomplishments that you're going to do in this job? When I was retiring from the Air Force, a Veterans Administration, the VA in the United States that takes care of veterans after they retire. They had a counselor there who talked about transitioning to the civilian world, and it opened my eyes when he said, there's a lot of people who are very good at what they do and they make a lot of money. They get good compensation, but they're miserable. There's a lot of millionaires out there who are miserable because they don't find any joy in what they do. So in the book, I talk about, finding that purpose and that joy, not short-term elation, but something that truly motivates you to do what you do every day. And then on the part on compensation, I also talk about, money comes and goes. We all need it. We have to have a certain amount of money to live and to do the things that we want to do in life. So I'm not against that, but I'm also against, hey, I'm doing this, I'm going to go find the job that pays a couple dollars an hour, or a couple euro an hour more because it's more money. But, well, it's not the job you want to do. I've given up many jobs that were very high paying because I had reached a point where it wasn't bringing me joy anymore. I knew I'd accomplished what I needed to accomplish, and it was time to move on. And then I found a new challenge that remotivated me, and I was good at it. I was getting good compensation, and that brought me joy, and it kept me moving. And that's the way that I've tried to make decisions for myself in life, and I'd recommend people to take a look at that. The other part about compensation, when we talk about money, yeah, money's needed, and good pay is also good. But there's other forms of compensation to consider when you're, taking a look at a job, and those are, growth. And I write about that. I had opportunities to be in rooms that I never imagined. I met presidents of the United States, from a kid who was a school teacher father and one of 6 kids that lived in a small town in the USA. I got to meet presidents. I got to be in rooms with, commanders, 4-star generals and admirals that were making decisions that were impacting things going on in the world. And just having that kind of access helped me to grow and see how people who had been that, were ahead of me, how they had moved through life and how they make decisions. That was huge compensation. It helped me all throughout my life. Travel. I didn't fly on an airplane until I was 17 years old. 5 years later, I was in pilot training, and a year after that, I was a single
Yes.
seat fighter pilot flying the F-15. I had no idea, other than the where, within a few hundred miles of where I'd grown up, what the world was like. Now having traveled on nearly every continent on Earth, and seeing places that I only had read about or dreamed about, really changed me and helped me grow as a person to understand other cultures, that there's different approaches to the same problems. So, that's very important in what you do. And I suggest that people make that happen. As far as keeping that going today, um, there's little things that leaders can do. You don't need to have those mandatory fun meetings that nobody really has any fun at, but there's ways that you can make people feel important in what they do every day. And most people, they want to feel that they're doing something bigger than themselves, that they're a part of something that matters, and the work they do actually contributes and matters, but they often don't get that feedback. And so I purposely tried, when I was in an office that was near, sometimes remote work now keeps this from happening, but when you're with your team, take the time. I take an hour every day to walk to offices and talk to each individual, not just in big meetings, but one-on-one or in small groups, and learn more about what's happening within the organization, but also impart upon them, what to reinforce the mission, to let them know what my vision was for where we were going, to talk about the values that were important, and let them know that their work mattered and that I cared about the work that they were doing. Sometimes if they wanted to, you talk about their families, and they could see that I cared more about them than just being an employee. I cared about him as a person. And that goes a long way as a leader when you do have to make tough decisions that people may not like. They at least know it wasn't personal, that you do care about them. But you just, this is the reason why I had to make this decision, because I had made the time to connect with them and let them know that they were important to the team and they were important to me. So having those kind of interactions, also having informal gatherings where you reward people for accomplishments, and also times where you can just let people air grievances, in a fun way. That we can make fun of ourselves. We can make fun of others outside the organization that have made our lives miserable. Those are all important parts, and I write about it in the book. About Friday nights in the squadron bar, about those rituals and how important they were. It wasn't just a bunch of guys getting together and drinking. It was a team coming together and
On the,
bonding and
yeah.
building trust, that trust that you need in an environment that, rank aside, just like a debrief. It was just a chance to be there in the moment and understand that you had this common bond with, this group of warriors.
I think the book in kind of grows up until the end where you are basically giving your coaching tools okay? Because at a certain point, you're talking about people, okay? And that's exactly what the coach Bill Campbell was saying. It's the people, it's the people. So it's something that you realize through a complete different career. You know, he was a football coach. You are a fighter pilot. So, but you get to the same conclusion because it's something that when you are in the high stakes, you build through repetition, you build through a process, and then you know, at the end, when the mission is done, what lasts is the people, the bonds, and the moments of light in the middle of the storm. You know, so really, it's the last part of the book is dense and intense, I would say, with these tools because really you're sharing them greatly. There is an episode there that we shared from two different parts of the world, you know, and we're sharing that we were in uniform during 9/11, and our aviation career overlapped, as I said before, at a time that really completely changed the world. For me, it meant that from then on, we were 24/7 on alert, initially with the F-104, then with the F-16, and so on. So it changed completely what we were doing. There was like rotation before, but now, from the moment, it was like that. And you know, your message in a skyless travel isn't about conflict; it's about purpose. So when you write about 9/11, you're writing about, it's not about medals or promotion, it's about how we made others feel because you had a big duty there, like a very severe duty in the moment. When you look back, what does purpose mean to you?
Yeah. Well, purpose is about having an impact on the mission you are supporting or the people that you are leading, to me. Um, a lot of people, hear the word legacy, and that's a big one. Oh, what's someone's legacy? Well, legacy is somewhere out there in the future. And, most of us aren't, as much as we hate to admit it, we're not that important. And most of the people in the world aren't going to know what you and I have done 50 years from now. There's a few famous names in human history that everybody knows, but the rest of us, we do what we do. We impact the people we're with today. So to me, purpose is impacting that mission and the people that I'm with today, and less about whether they remember me when I'm gone. If I'm able to look back and see that the organization I left, that I led, is functioning and it's successful and it's continuing to grow, and the people that then had worked for me or that I had led have now stepped up and become leaders in their own right, then to me, that's the true legacy and that's the purpose. Um, you don't know how happy I am. There's a lot of people who think, oh boy, I need to be the most important person in this group. I'm going to hoard all this information and I'm going to be the one that has it all. And it just stifles creativity and stifles interaction amongst the team. And then when they leave, there's no one there prepared to take over, and the whole thing crumbles. And they look, see how important I was? I left and they couldn't do it without me. That's not leadership. Leadership is leaving something behind that's better than when you took it over or when you were a part of it. And even if no one remembers your name, you can look back and say, look at that. It's still functioning today. It's even better. It keeps growing. Then that's impact and that's purpose and that's legacy in the end of it all. So to me, that's what mattered to me. The other part is it's okay to laugh and have fun at work, and we should do that more. We spend inordinate amount of time, our waking hours, most people during their working years are there at work. And why should you be miserable? Again, it's okay to have joy in your life. It's okay to have, hey, this is fun. I like being with my coworkers. I like being with my colleagues and peers. Uh, this is fun, and it should be fun. It doesn't mean that you're not efficient. Just because you're stern-faced doesn't mean you're doing the work better. It should be fun. And the more fun you are, the more it builds the bonds and the trust within that team that allows you then to continue on doing the things that you do. And like, as we talked about earlier with the trust part, about then how you, with emotional safety, you can grow as an organization. Yeah, in the end, the
Yeah,
memories, right? To me, it's about the memories. I don't remember half of the things that we did, but I remember the people that I did them with.
yeah.
And to me, that's the most important part of the career that I had.
whether in the cockpit, boardroom, family as well. Leadership is about, as you said, making an impact, being of service. That's the real legacy. And, as a leader, it's not the mission that you achieve, really is how you become, how you grow while serving the others and making them grow. Kyle, anything else you want to say apart from our chat?
No, I'm just envious that you still get to strap on a fighter jet and go out there now and then. I know for you, like you said, it'll come to an end someday. I still feel like I could strap on that F-15 behind me and F-18 behind me, but I know it's a young man's game, and I'm glad that we have the people who are doing it today, continuing those
Yeah,
things that
yeah,
we were able to do before them, and then we built upon those things of the guys that taught us
yeah.
and that led us. So I'm just honored to be a part of all of it. I'm grateful that you were able to have me on your show. And again, anybody that's interested,
That's the book.
Skyless Traveled is available at Amazon Books. Like I said, in Kindle paperback now, we'll have hardcovers out, and then in a short time we'll have the audio book. So I'm looking forward to getting feedback from everybody on what they thought was good and what they didn't understand in the book, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, your contacts are gonna be in the notes, so if people are gonna write, you're gonna respond for sure. Kyle, thank you for flying this mission with us today. Your book, A Sky Less Traveled, is more than a memoir. It's a navigation chart for anyone learning to lead with courage, clarity, and purpose. To everyone listening, remember what Kyle said, leadership isn't about rank or position. It's about trust, accountability, and service. Until next time, fly safe, lead well, and never stop refining your tool. Take care.